A very good afternoon to all of you. All right, before we formally begin the proceedings of today, I would like all of us to stand up and pay respect and have a minute of silence. One of our faculty members' mother, also a very distinguished former Chief Minister of Delhi, died on 20th July, and I would like us to pay a mark of respect for her before we begin today's proceedings. All right, very good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed my proud privilege to welcome all the new students of the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, in particular the students of the MA Public Policy as well as the BA Honours in Economics program. Both sets of students have joined the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy this academic year. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our distinguished commencement speaker, Dr. Ganesh Devi. Will be formally introduced by Professor Sudarshan, the Dean of our Public Policy School. I am grateful to Dr. Devi for taking out time to be here and to be able to deliver the commencement lecture for the new students. Congratulations to the students of JSGP for having joined both the programs. In a way, the establishment of the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy was an effort to create an interdisciplinary program building on the other schools that we had established. The idea from the very beginning of its founding was to be able to, educate and train students on understanding issues surrounding policy, and in particular to improve the policy effectiveness within the country. The master's program was first of its kind. In fact, when we started the MA in Public Policy, JSDP was the first program in the entire country to have a full-fledged master's program in that discipline. Since then, of course, there have been a number of other schools which have started the public policy program, and several of them modeled on the lines of what we have done. Over the years, we also started the undergraduate program, the BA Honours in Economics, which essentially attracted students who have completed their high school education and are wanting to pursue a degree in economics. This school is also, like other schools of JGU, quite interdisciplinary. So for all the new students who are here, I want to quickly run through some of the unique features of this university, but more importantly, our strong commitment to promoting public policy education. This university was founded through a philanthropic initiative of our founding benefactor, Mr. Naveen Jindal. The vision of the university when it was founded was very clearly to provide world-class education for students in India, and to be able to give them opportunities to excel in their aspirations, in their careers, in their study as well. We began in a very modest manner with only 10 faculty members and 100 students in the year 2009, and over the last decade we have grown quite substantially, but also expanded in various schools and programs. As we celebrate our 10th anniversary this year, we have nearly 5,000 plus students and nearly 500 plus faculty members. The reason it's important for you to get this perspective is that, this school, this university is part of a vision to create institutions of global excellence in India. There was a point of time in our own history we had institutions such as Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi and Vikramshila type institutions. Both the pre-independent India and the post-independent India, we have seen different types of institutions emerge. At the dawn of Indian independence, we had 20 universities, and today we have nearly 1,000 universities. We have dramatically expanded the higher education sector. Unfortunately, we have not been able to focus on quality, let alone excellence. There are significant challenges in the higher education sector, most of which is also connected to our inability to fashion higher education policies which will address the challenges relating to higher education. I also want to mention that public policy today has become a very important field because of the expanding role of the state, but also expanding role of regulations. There are number of new regulations and governance institutions being created with a view to advancing various dimensions of public policy, and it is only appropriate that new generations of students who will be trained in public policy can indeed respond to those challenges and help us navigate through those processes. Another core aspect of public policy education is essentially speaking truth to power. At a time when many of our democratic institutions are being challenged for a number of reasons, it is only fair and important that voices need to be, let's say, nurtured so that we can respond to these challenges more effectively. Dogmatic approaches from the left or the right is not going to help us. We need more nuanced understanding of policy, and also responses need to be more rigorous, and that is what public policy education should help you achieve. Even when we teach economics at the public policy school, there is a very conscious effort to make it as interdisciplinary as possible so that our students are richly benefited by the experience that they have in pursuing these opportunities. I want to say that the university has a number of features, but very quickly, if I were to identify 5 important features of our university which has a direct bearing on your school, it will be useful for the new students. First is that our strength is our faculty. Universities around the world are built around different visions and ideas, but the core and critical element of our university's vision is to be able to hire outstanding individuals as faculty members so that they can mentor our students, they can teach and pursue research and contribute to knowledge creation. That is exactly what the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy is. We are very fortunate that it is led by an outstanding individual as its dean and many other faculty members from different walks of life who are contributing to public policy teaching and research. Very famously, the founding rector of Nanyang Technological University, NTU, said some time ago, and NTU, for those of you who may not know, is a leading university in Singapore. It's one of the top 50 universities in the world. It essentially grew to become a leading university barely in 2 to 3 decades, and never before in the history of the world a university was created at a very short span of time and ended up becoming a world-class university in span of 3 decades. So when it was asked to the founder, he mentioned, and they were asking that, how do you build a world-class university? And he said there are essentially 3 characteristics of a world-class university. And he said, first, people; second, people; and third, people. With that vision, to have outstanding individuals in the faculty becomes an absolute imperative if our aspirations are to build world-class universities. The second critical aspect of our university, which is almost the DNA of our university, is our strong commitment to internationalization. Global is our middle name. Essentially, when we speak about internationalization, our effort is to build substantive partnerships with universities around the world. In the last decade, we have built partnerships with over 250 institutions spread across 55 different countries, in which we have been able to forge partnerships for the benefits of our students. Here I would like to highlight only 3 dimensions of those partnerships which have a direct bearing on the aspirations of our students. These include student exchange program, short-term study abroad program, as well as dual degree programs, all 3 of which are available and applicable for the students of public policy, both in the BA Economics Honors program as well as the MA Public Policy program. I sincerely hope that many of you take the benefit of these opportunities. Every year, 400 plus students from Jindal pursue these programs around the world. These include, at least from the standpoint of the short-term study abroad programs, 35 plus students go to Harvard, around 25 go to Berkeley, around 25 go to Fletcher at Tufts University, around 100 go to Oxford, and now 30 plus go to Columbia. And there are programs in North America, Canada, Western Europe, Southeast Asia, as well as many other parts of the world. That's our, and of course, within the faculty itself, nearly 17 to 18% of our full-time faculty members are non-Indian nationals recruited from over 32 different countries and regions in the world. And the others, including people like me and my colleagues, are also people who have had opportunities to engage with the world at large. We strongly believe that geography has become history, and it's important for our students to be benefited by the ability to engage with the world at large. This, of course, does not mean that we ignore what is happening in our own communities and societies. Our ability to engage with the world indeed strengthens our resolve to engage within India and within Haryana and within Sonipat. And that is part of our vision and imagination. The third aspect, rather the fourth aspect of our university is our strong commitment to building a research culture. We are a research-oriented university. The fact that we maintain a 1:10 faculty-student ratio has enabled our students to receive more support and more attention from our faculty, but also it helps our faculty members to pursue research. Research becomes the centerpiece of our institutional growth and journey, and our faculty members have been actively publishing in reputed journals in India and abroad. We also, there are different types of research our faculty members do, but it is driven by the research centers that our faculty members are part of. Every school has a different set of centers. The university itself has over 50 centers and 3 capacity building institutes. These are not physical spaces, these are intellectual spaces for our faculty to pursue their research interests. The fifth being our strong commitment to public service in all its forms and manifestations, initially through scholarships that we offer to our students, but also the kind of work that our students and faculty pursue within the local community here at Sonipat, but also in Mewat district within Haryana and many other parts of Northeast as well as other parts of India. So I want to end by saying that students, all of you who are here in JSDP, are indeed privileged. You are privileged to be part of an institution that is deeply committed to learning and to ideas. The opportunity to study at Jindal should help you have a transformative experience. With all privilege comes responsibility, and I sincerely hope that you will use this opportunity for the benefit of yourself and indeed the future. I also want to say that one of the remarkable things about your school is that a good number of your graduate students are indeed pursuing a number of careers in the broader framework of public service. Public service is so deeply embedded in the institutional culture of JSDP, and your faculty members have mentored you. Your courses indeed help you think through those issues, and the pedagogy that is adopted in the learning also helps you to enhance your thinking about public service. I hope each one of you, develop those skills and those thinking processes as you go through the journey of public policy and economics education at JSDP. The faculty members are extremely accessible. We are a very, a less hierarchical university, which means that you can reach out to your dean, your school professors, and of course to me and to our registrar, Professor Murthy, if you have any difficulty. One of the things that we have tried to do here is to make conversations with people who are holding responsibility as easy and as accessible as possible, so that you don't get lost in the myriad of things that take place within a university. I want to end by saying that join us in the celebration of our 10th anniversary. This journey would not have been possible but for the outstanding contribution of the students who have been part of JSDP in the past years, the contribution of the faculty members of JSDP, and also the belief and faith that each one of you have in the institution to advance the cause of learning and education in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar. It's my privilege and pleasure to invite all of you, the new students, as well as some of the students who are senior, to this occasion for the commencement lecture of our new academic year. Now, I won't say very much about the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. I've done that already at the orientation, so I could, no need to take up time on that. But I want to underline that this is the 10th year of the university, as the Vice Chancellor mentioned, and we wanted someone very, very special to be our commencement speaker today. So normally in a public policy school, as you would expect, and as we did, you'd get people who've served in government, who are economists. Our first commencement speaker when the school started in 2012 was Kaushik Basu. He just remitted his office as Chief Economic Advisor and was going to become the Chief Economist of the World Bank. So we had Kaushik Basu, and we had people like that. Ratin Roy, who's the director of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. We had Saida Hamid, who was then in the Planning Commission. A long list of people who've been engaged in, public affairs. Some of you may know that Professor Shiv Vishwanathan makes a distinction between policy intellectuals and public intellectuals. I recall he would say that someone like Shukumar Chakravarti, who was a teacher in the Delhi School of Economics, also was in the Planning Commission, was the kind of a policy intellectual who applied his learning and his insights and vision to help government with its policy. And there are others who are public intellectuals who don't work for the government, but are the kind of people who are capable of speaking, as Raj said, speaking truth to power. But I rather think that in our school we have to learn how to speak the truth about power. I think people in power pretty much know the truth. They need to be told that, but it's not that they would immediately wake up and have their moment on the of revelation on the road to Damascus. They are people in power and want to remain in power and would do anything possible to stay in power. So we need to understand how is it that they managed to do that. How does power work is one of the things we have to learn in a school of public policy and in courses in economics. Those dynamics are important. So we have in Dr. Ganesh Devi, an extraordinary man who's very, very gentle in his demeanor, but of phenomenal courage and grit, and taking up a cause and causes that call for that kind of courage. He's been an outstanding professor in Baroda for several years. He got the Sahitya Academy Award for his work on the influence of colonialism on the state of our languages, amnesia. He had the courage to return the award in 2015. And now he's moved by the fact that people like Narayan Dabolkar, Govind Pansare, M.M. Kalburgi, and down the line Gauri Lankesh have been victimized for standing up courageously and speaking truth to power. He's moved from Baroda to Dharwad, which is in my state. And Dharwad, every place in India, I suppose, has something special that you can take note of and write about, and feet must learn, whichever place you are. There's always some history and some legend and some myth and some people associated with the place that makes the place special. Dharwad is a special place. It's a place which is in a way a confluence of the cultures of the north and the Deccan, the south. It's a place which has produced Bhimsen Joshi, Mallikarjun Mansoor, Gangubai Hanagal, great poet in Kannada, Dhara Bendre, Girish Karnad, who we lost recently. So he's moved there. I mean, he picked the place for its significance and for its connections. And his contributions to Indian languages and understanding of Indian languages is phenomenal. I mean, he set up a great survey of languages, discovered, about 780 of them and documented those languages in those languages, working with people who were the bearers of that language. Now, this is not, fiscal deficit and revenue deficit and balance of payments and, all of that sort of thing, which normally passes off for public policy. I think it's special that we pay attention to what it means to lose a great heritage, what it means when a language is lost, and what it means to recover knowledge forms and understandings of the world from small communities of people who would otherwise be overlooked and unknown. I mean, the world pays much more attention to animals or birds that are in threat of extinction, but somehow seem to forget that there are human beings and communities and people and languages that face that dire threat. And it takes a lot of courage for someone to be the advocate and to bring to life something that would, if neglected, would definitely die and be lost. That's the kind of person Dr. Ganesh Devi is, and we are very privileged that he's with us to set us thinking, not just about the usual things about social science knowledge and its insights and what you do by way of policy at the state, local level, multi-level governance and all that, but to think about these kinds of issues which get overlooked, and the fact that many of us, because we use English, I think have felt a sense of guilt at not being able to understand our own mother tongue well enough. I was, very moved and had that feeling when I read a biography of my mother tongue, Tamil, by David Shulman. And I had to ask myself, do I have to learn about my mother tongue reading David Shulman? I mean, there's got to be something wrong if that's the case, right? And unfortunately, it's true. I mean, if you take a language that grew up in this soil, in this country, Urdu, and the situation that language finds itself in now, despite its great literature and its creativity and its contributions, not just here, unfortunately also in Pakistan. Urdu is in dire straits as a language. It's not produced a Ghalib after him. So we need to worry about these things, and worry about the fact that people may think that national unity or nationalism requires one language and one cause. India is not that at all, and so we need to remind ourselves about that and sensitize ourselves to those kinds of causes which are important, which may not appear like your concerns about bread and butter and daily duty, but they are very, very important. And so we have a very, very important person to give our commencement lecture this year, and I'm very indebted and grateful to him, Dr. Ganesh Devi.
Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Sudarshan, Dr. Murthy, colleagues, students, and my very dear friend Shiva Vishwanathan, who's sitting there. I'm in awe of you, all of you, and I feel a bit nervous talking to such a brilliant group of minds. So I'll go very slow in what I had to say. I come from a village called Dharwad. It is known for its excellence, but its excellence is drawn from the village Mitti, not from a big library. not from a galaxy of intellectuals. So probably my language, my idiom, may be a little different than the idiom that you expect from me or to which you're used to. So please bear with me. When you hear a song, and when you come across the same song after a few years, you remember it very easily. But when you hear a sentence, such as the sentences I said a few minutes ago, and if you were to hear the same sentences a few years later, you may not easily recall that you heard those sentences. Songs, despite a tune, a harmony, a rhythm, also have words. But those words stick in one's mind much longer than the words that are non-song. Would you say you agree with me? You do. What may be the reason? What is the nature of those words which, if put in verse, have one kind of impact within your cognitive range, and placed in prose have a different kind of impact? The answer is, it is not anything to do with the words themselves, but with the way the arrangement of the cognitive field, the cognitive capacity, is made inside the human brain. And that arrangement, the neurological arrangement, is very important when we think of language, languages, or anything to do with languages, anything based upon languages. There are roughly 85 billion neurons that work inside our skull, inside the brain. And that's a huge amount of labor. When I was asking the Vice Chancellor, sir, how many faculty you have, and of course he's defined the university as people, people, and people. And he said 500 faculty, 5,000 students, or whatever the number. 85 billion neurons working is several million times of these faculties and these students working together. Every human brain does that work to produce language, to organize it, to sort it, analyze it, and make a sense of all kinds of sound reaching your ears. It is mostly the left side of the brain that does this work. There's an area called the Broca's area, the Broca's lobe of the brain does this work. And it's a very huge, please remember, this is, you normally speak of labor market, labor policy, labor unrest, and so on. This is a huge amount of labor. If you look at a newborn, if you look at an infant, say about 8 or 9 months old, and trying to utter the first syllables, you'll notice that that child requires much larger length of, sleep for a larger length of time every day. Not because the body is slow, the body is lazy, but because the brain has to be working in order to make language. There's a French thinker called Lacan, Jacques Lacan. And when you visit the library the next time, do look up Jacques Lacan's books. There's a book called Writing, Écriture, script, writing. In that, Lacan describes how a child from the age of the 8th or the 9th month to the 18th month analyzes all the sounds inside the brain and discovers a way of distinguishing. This is a huge, this step is a very huge step in one's knowledge journey, distinguishing between the self and the other. It is in those 9 or 10 months that a child creates an I-ness and the non-I-ness, the self and the rest, or what Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, would have said, the phenomenal world, the world outside, and the world of the consciousness, or what the Upanishadic thinkers would describe as the chitta. Does the word chitta exist in some of your language? I mean, you understand what chitta is? Not chitta, chitta, the consciousness. A huge amount of work is carried out by every human brain in early infancy in order to distinguish, break up the world into the self and the non-self. It is a breaking up of a world which is actually as it is undifferentiated world, like a flowing river. I am still not sure if your selfness is not quite a delusion, a make-believe construct, a false hypothesis, an untenable proposition. I do not know if my consciousness, actually exists as a differentiated thing in the world. And I do not therefore know if the phenomenal world, the world surrounding me, this room, the lights, everybody out there and everybody out there, whether all of that is a dream that I am dreaming or whether it is real. These are heavy philosophical questions. I have no answers for these questions. But one thing I know for sure, and that is the only bridge between one's consciousness, the chitta, and the phenomenal world, the satya or the astitva or reality, is language. For humans, that is the only bridge to connect the one with the other. And in absence of that bridge, the human mind, if the mind exists, but the human cognition, which does exist, would be completely at a loss while making an attempt to formulate any image of what exists at all. The cosmos, the world, the nation, the society, the classroom, your neighborhood, whatever. In absence of language, humans would not have been humans. And indeed, that is the most dramatic marker of the human identity. The Homo sapiens are distinguished from all other animal species because of the ability that Homo sapiens have developed, the ability to speak, to make a sense of speech, to formulate abstractions on the basis of speech. Therefore, language is the very foundation of our being human. Knock language out, and no longer I will be human. And I'm not talking of language as speech act alone. I mean, even those members of the human species that do not manage to physically speak have speech in their head. So I'm talking of language in that sense. If language is the foundation of the human society, if language indeed is the foundation of all that we know or know as knowledge, If language is the ultimate range of human communication and therefore forming human communities, the word community is drawn on the word communication. Those who communicate form a community. As simple as that. If language is the foundation of community, if language is the foundation of knowledge, if language is the foundation of human life as human life, then if a language is noticed as being threatened, we have to conclude that life, the mind, the society are being threatened. I'm sure we are exactly, I was counting, we are 103 in this room. And if I were to do a very quick survey, I'll notice that there are at least 18 or 19 languages spoken by all of us put together. There may be somebody speaking Tamil. Is there indeed, apart from Shiv and you? Two more. And there may be somebody speaking Hindi or Gujarati or Punjabi. Are there any? There are plenty. Now, in Gujarati, if you were to say Doklak Sarasche, you cannot say the same thing the same way in Punjabi or in Tamil. Or if Chinese, yes. So, yes. I mean, you cannot describe the softness of noodles in the Mandarin the same way as you can describe the softness of noodle in Malayalam. Every language is a unique worldview. No, when people say that, what is the harm if we had only one language? All of us would be so nicely united. We will form a great harmony. That will not happen. What will form is a great mess, the greatest mess that humans have ever experienced. Every language is a unique worldview, and therefore every language which is a bridge connecting the consciousness and the reality is a unique way of describing the reality as it exists. All over the world, there are about 6,000 languages, which means humans are able to look at the world in 6,000 unique ways. Unfortunately, these unique worldviews are very rapidly sinking, they are collapsing. At one time, the roads minister in India had mentioned that the bridges in India have become very old and many of them are about to fall. Mr. Gadkari has said this last year. Far more important is the condition, is the fact that languages all over the world have started declining. Humans are losing the ability of perceiving the world in their own unique manner. This process began quite some time back. It is not as if that has happened now, recently. Probably with the development of the print technology, which we very often imagine to be an aid to perpetuation of language, with the development of print technology, languages all over the world have started becoming weaker. Let me explain this because it may not go down easily very well with you. All of us are in the habit of thinking that anything that can be written is a language. And that's utter nonsense. Humans have been speaking language for last 70,000 years. But humans have been writing language only for the last 5,000 and 6,000 years. For the first 64,000 years of the existence of languages, they were never written and yet they were languages. Writing is a photograph of a language. Now your selfie is not yourself. There is a big gap, difference between yourself and selfie. Only those only those whose self feels a bit threatened by the word get into drawing selfies more frequently. It's the vulnerability of the self is reflected in the frequency with which one takes selfies. Language is not writing. If a certain language does not have a script, it does not mean that ceases to be a language. I'll give an example, a familiar example. You have heard of the English language which I am using now. It does not have a script of its own even today. Think of this. The British set up a whole committee to translate the Bible into English. But the British never set up even a single committee to create a script for the English language. In the entire history of 800 or 900 years, no script was created for the English language. It is, they used the script that was used for Latin. It's the Roman script which is in use. It is used by other languages like French, Spanish, Italian, any number of languages. So a language does not depend on, language to be a language does not depend on whether it has a script or no script. So let's knock that out of our thoughts permanently. Language is speech. There are about 6,000 languages in the world. For the last 200 years, when the print technology came into wider use globally, it was first there in China, then it was in Europe, but in the rest of the world, in our part of the world, we've been using print technology for the last 200 years. And suddenly the languages that acquired the print technology, and therefore the printed book, and therefore a book culture, and therefore certain forms of knowledge, and therefore certain manner of validation of what knowledge is, started looking at these languages, started looking at the non-printed, non-booked, non-commented upon, non-validated languages as non-languages. Those languages started looking at other languages as dialects of those languages. For quite a while, Oriya was seen as a dialect of Bengali. Konkani was seen as a dialect of Marathi. Kutchi was seen as a dialect of Sindhi, and so on. Even today, Bhojpuri is seen as a dialect of Hindi. It's quite mind-boggling. It is atrocity of the highest order. In the last census, 5 crore 20 lakh Indians claimed Bhojpuri as their mother tongue. They went out and said, "This is the name of our mother tongue is Bhojpuri." Is 5 crore 20 lakhs, is several times larger than the population of New Zealand. The census authorities place Bhojpuri as a subcategory of Hindi in order to show Hindi being spoken by 52 crores. During the 20th century, when India was moving towards freedom, the question of how India shall be governed linguistically came up. And we thought of dividing the Indian landmass territory along the lines of languages. So a linguistic state organization commission was set up in the 50s, and till the mid-60s it worked, probably for the next 20 years it worked, and our linguistic states were created. For Marathi, Maharashtra was created. For Kannada, Karnataka was created. But in the process, people on the borders of those states got divided. I'll give an example. There is a community called Bhils. It's a tribal community. its total population may be close to 2 crores. And it's not small population, it's several times larger than the population of Himachal Pradesh. It is a lot more than the population of Goa. The bills got distributed in 4 states: Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh. Just because the Bhili language did not have a script. Linguistic states were created in India for the languages that had scripts, but not for the languages that did not have scripts. This was a scientific fallacy, but it was political policy. And it has affected the destinies of those people who got distributed, because bills are a minority community in Maharashtra, minority community in Rajasthan, minority community in Madhya Pradesh, and minority community in Gujarat. And as a result, the school education in Gujarat does not provide education in Bhili for the children of the Bhili speakers. In Rajasthan, for the children of the Bhili speakers. In Madhya Pradesh, so everywhere they are linguistic minority, and they are left out of the educational mainstream. Those children have to study the language of their own state. In Maharashtra, they have to study Marathi, which is second language. Then they have to study Hindi, which is the third language. Then they have to study English, which is fourth language. And then they can come to this classroom in Jindal. Is there anybody from the Bhil community here? You see, this is a commentary not on this gathering, but it's a comment on the nature of marginalization that the state language policy has brought into our life as a reality. Ask me the question, how many such languages are affected? I mentioned Bhili. Wait. Tulu, of course, that is another category. Tulu in Karnataka, which is a non-tribal language, Kutchi in Gujarat. You have, let's say, Magai in Bihar. These are major ancient languages, at one time having their own scripts. Tulu, he mentioned, Tulu had a script of its own in medieval times, which Kannada speakers used as their script. But now the Kannada script is being used by the Tulu speakers, and Tulu has no state. There are 21 such major minor languages apart from the minor languages in the country. But we'll not get into the merit of each case, because it will take me a whole semester. I think you should invite me for doing a semester on this. Here I give you a synoptic view of how far we have caused injustice in the country. About 100 years back, a very capable linguist from Ireland did a survey of our languages. His name was George Abram Grierson, and he described 189 languages and 544 dialects. I wish we could use his study even now, but unfortunately, after he finished his work 100 years ago, 90 years ago, our country's map changed. And Grierson's work had not taken into account many of the southern Indian languages, because the Nizam was not very hospitable to Grierson. And since independence, the government of India could never carry out a survey of Indian languages. Some of my colleagues, tribal friends, and me, we got together, and when we did a survey, we found 850 living languages in the country. 850 languages with their independent specific grammar, and languages which are functioning and are claimed by people as their languages. I thought this was a very large number, and initially I used to feel a bit shy in mentioning this number. But then if I tell you what the census has been saying about the language, you will be quite thrilled, and maybe you will also be very enriched. The 1961 census of India had recorded 1652 mother tongues. 1971 census had recorded 109 mother tongues. I mean, in 10 years' time, they decided to wipe out more than 1500 names. But whatever is suppressed in history, whatever is pushed out as trash in history, has a habit of returning and revisiting those who push that out. So in 2011 census, Indians, and at that time it was 121 crores, 121 crore Indians in 2011 census went out to say that they had 3,900 mother tongues. The census authorities did their best to, kind of silence them, hush them up. And finally, the census authority decided that there are roughly 1,800 mother tongues which are worth giving a consideration. But out of those 1,800, the census said 500 have never been heard before. Nobody's heard about them. So the census accepted 1,383 mother tongues as formally recorded mother tongues in the census, and then tried to distribute these into languages and put them in 121 boxes. So the census 2011 has claimed 121 existing languages, each language containing several mother tongues. For instance, the box of Hindi contains 66 other mother tongues, which are non-Hindi languages. But for the census purpose, it is all Hindi. Punjabi has 12 other. Gujarati has 44 other languages, which are not Gujarati. Marathi has 53 or 54 other languages clubbed together. Anyway, I will not get into the pathos, the misery, the rejection that people whose mother tongues are denied have to experience. We are causing a great harm to this diversity that we have in the country. But I'll now turn to another aspect of this. Of course, if democracy does not care for diversity, to that extent, it starts ceasing being a democracy. It ceases to be a democracy. The heart of democracy is diversity. The heart of democracy is not agreement. The heart of democracy is debate, having different views, having different ways of looking at the world, having different worldviews. I'll now turn to another aspect of this. This situation is in existence not only in India. This is the situation all over the world. In Papua New Guinea, which had larger number of languages than India has, in 1961 they had claimed 1,100 languages. Today they are not able to speak of more than 180 languages. It's the same in Indonesia. It is the same in Nigeria. I mean, these India, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Papua New Guinea put together have about half of the world's languages in existence. But in all these countries with maximum number of languages in existence, there is a huge amount of language death being reported. I mean, what happens when a language dies? It's not, a language is not like a buffalo or a horse or a cow. The last speaker stops speaking, or a large number of people migrate out of one language to another language zone, and a language disappears. That Bo lady in Andaman, who was the last speaker, or the Mazi speaker in Sikkim, the last speaker, whose language died 4 or 5 years back, the Mazi in Sikkim. In the last days, they were speaking to birds and clouds because there was nobody else to speak that language with. But with the sinking of those words, a tradition of knowledge which has been in existence for thousands of years has gone down. For some languages, this tradition of knowledge has been 70,000 years old. Humans have been speaking languages for 70,000 years. Very often a question is asked as to why these languages are dying. Is the government alone responsible? Is the education policy responsible? Is the poor quality of census responsible? Is it the assault of globalization responsible? Is it colonialism and its effects responsible for the language loss? Is it the print technology? All of those are factors. But a far more important factor is that the humans have been an evolving species. And in the process of evolution, I mean, over the last 5 lakh years, humans have used for the first couple of lakh years only gestures for communication. Then subsequently they use tones, textures of tones, tonality, music for communication. Last 70,000 years they've been using language for communication. It appears that humans are now moving out of language as we know it. They are moving closer to communication through images. The human brain, the Broca's lobe, is and scientists tell us, is showing great fatigue. Children no longer want to either read or write. But it does not mean that they're cognitively any less than children belonging to previous generations. Though we professors keep complaining that students no longer read books, I think all over the world, the voice-based language is giving way to an image-based manner or systems of communication. We are at a turning point in our evolution. When we arrived at this turning point, since language was the foundation of knowledge, most fields of knowledge also started collapsing together, collapsing away from their traditional base. All disciplines have changed in the last 10 or 15 years. New disciplines are emerging because the nature of knowledge itself will be quite different in the coming years. Probably we may continue to speak a few words, but the ability of the words to carry meaning will be much less than what it is now. In this situation, when everything is changing, when languages are disappearing, when knowledge is going through an major epistemic shift, the state has a very major role to play in terms of language policy. It is not enough for the state to just declare some awards or set up some institutions for so-called language development. There's a lot more that the state has to think about. I will say it very briefly and then I'll conclude. Humans have gathered knowledge in language over the last 70,000 years through an enormous amount of labor. Each one of us over the last 70,000 years has contributed, and when I say labor, is not physical labor alone. Of course, physical labor also contributes to language development, but mental labor. And it's not easy. It must have taken a huge amount of biochemical. Please think of this. Let's not, have this superficial distinction between the labor of the neurons and the labor of the muscles. A huge amount of labor which created a massive memory. All of that we're ready to lose today. All humans, all over the world, tacitly, collectively, are willing to surrender the human memory and replace it with artificial memory chip. Please think of how your knowledge transaction happens today. Unless you have the artificial memory chip, your knowledge transaction will be completely challenged. Humans are moving from that memory to a new memory, and in the process, trashing out, vandalizing, giving up what has accumulated as memory. You will notice that the state today, not only in India, but in Turkey, in Spain, in Brazil, in China, in Russia, and the United States, is attacking memory. History is being twisted. Non-existent histories are being put up. A virtual image of history is forced on you as the image of history as it was. Please think of what is happening to the state, what is happening to the democracies in the world, why suddenly a certain political view is dominant, and that view is specializing in attack on history. Please think of this as a global phenomenon related to the process of evolution. I'm not saying that this is going forward. I'm not saying attack on memory is going forward. I'm saying that this attack on memory, collective memory, image of history, is going forward in an unprepared manner. There's a big difference between going forward. There's a big difference between the process of evolution and process of evolution in doldrums, in turmoil, lopsided process. I think in order to make it a proper process of evolution, where humans evolve to a higher kind of consciousness, where humans are capable of accommodating the virtual with the real itself is a virtual in the first place, as I said at the beginning. But there's another kind of virtual in relation to what we think is real, and we're trying to club the two together because we want to sail effortlessly from and to, between the virtual and the real, because that's the new space, new time that we're inventing, we're positing, we're bringing them into existence. In order to be humans there and not just machines, even in that virtual space and virtual time, even in that space and time which is at once virtual and real clubbed together, if we want to continue as humans and not only as robots, not only as cyborgs, cyberspace creatures, then we will have to be extra sensitive to memory that our ancestors have accumulated for us. We will have to be extra active vis-a-vis the state which is compressing your memory. We will have to be especially sensitive to the idea of diversity, which is the heart of democracy. If you merely become cyborgs, if you merely become masters of robots and therefore a robot yourself, and lose your diversity, your dialogue, your democracy, you will have rubbished the entire evolution of humans and brought us back to the status of a mere animal, a machine animal. Language and state are interlocked today in a fierce battle. The state wants to silence you. The state is trying to have perpetual surveillance over your brains and minds, your thoughts. The state is interested in inserting a kind of a thought virus in your minds. And your minds will have to protect that space of words, metaphor, euphoria, insanity, thought, and memory. Therefore, there are two policies in play. One is the people's policy towards language, which wants to save, protect, nurture language. And the other is the state policy towards language. And I'm not talking of India or India alone. This is the global situation. Therefore, please let us not have the naive idea that there will be some happy policy where the state and the people come together and languages will do what they can. Yet this turning point in our evolution, the people will have to take the things in their hands as far as language is concerned, and therefore as far as knowledge is concerned, and therefore as far as whatever is human is concerned, and assert themselves and change the state, not be change. There are only two things possible. You can change or you shall be changed. There is no third way, and it is for you to decide. That should be your policy. Thank you.
The floor is open. Please feel free to ask questions. Dr. Davies has kindly agreed to take questions.
Before you ask this question, I want to add one sentence. This was a commencement lecture, the 8th among different schools. So this was a concluding commencement lecture. You can ask.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So thank you first of all, thank you for the lecture. It was a very good knowledge for us. So thank you a lot. So my question is, you said like the census organization in 2011 has been trying to bury the history of various languages. But we as Indians, and I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone, take pride over our culture. So why would the census organization taking such so concerning taking so many steps to bury these languages and not recognize them as mother tongue? And I'm pretty sure it's not, and is it politically influenced? And if yes, then what we as a youth can do to probably bring a change? What you suggest?
Yeah, data, DATA data is like cloth, and a data report is like clothes. Somebody tailors them.
Sir, in your speech you touched upon how the linguistic state system in 1956, that was one of the reasons why language in our country, especially in our country, has been dying. But what would you suggest would be an alternative, even now, if we could change something to our so-called federal system, what would it be?
Thank you. It's a great question. I mean, it's a question that you is good you asked it. You should ask this every day, and every person that you meet, to every person that you meet. What will be ideal for us? It is true that we are 137 crores today, and it is true that by 2011 we were 121. But today's census is saying 137 crores, and in 2021 will be 140 crores. It is imagined that our population will stabilize at that time. It is true that we are one nation, but is it not possible to think of this nation as an arrangement of many
people. There are close to 400 tribes. There are 230 nomadic communities like Pardis, Sansis and so on. There are people who are along the coast, and there are at least 180 such coastal communities, each different from another community. Can they not have a dignity of their own? Or do we want all of them to submit to only one iron idea of the country? I think Mahatma Gandhi had traveled all over the country and thought of this, and he finally came up with the idea that we can think of a village as a unit, a locality as a unit, with self-governance. And I think some 30 years back, during Rajiv Gandhi's times, there was indeed an empowerment of the local community through this village, local self-governance. Our chase for the skill and saying that we are the biggest and the best in the world is sheer vanity. Sheer vanity. I'll tell you something. There is a rise of the right wing, ultra right wing in Europe. I don't know much about India. No, because I remain more occupied in my own work, therefore. But about Europe, I know ultra right. People who saluted Mussolini, contested, parade. They took out a parade on 27, contested elections and won. Their success was because they told the people in their country that they will protect the national pride against globalization. That's what Mr. Trump is doing. Trump is protecting the American national pride against the Spanish migrants, poor Spanish fellows who work in the streets of the US. So long as they wanted the labor, they allowed the Spanish to come. Now, in the name of national pride, I think an iron will is being imposed on the people, and the individuality and their diversity are being negated. And if somebody says, look, we are a Goan fishing community, the state will tell them that you are anti. You said it, I did not say it. I was going to say you are anti-fishing or something. But you said so. No? So I believe that seems to be a word making rounds in our country also. I think there is a great ecological, just as linguistic diversity is dying, there is ecological diversity threatened. And we are facing a very great critical moment in the history of the cosmos, in the history of the earth. And if we did not show caution now, not tomorrow, now, yesterday or now is already too late. If we do not exercise caution, we shall leave this earth completely destroyed. A group of scientists got together earlier this year and they declared officially, on the basis of objective studies, that we are already in the Anthropocene. That is, we are already in the era where humans have definitely left much stronger footprints on the earth than they are allowed to. I think we will have to return to the idea of small is necessary. I'm not talking small is beautiful. Small is necessary for our life. And therefore local community has to be given a greater sovereignty. Even if it agitates against the idea of a single law, a single Loho Purush or Atma Purush or whoever it is. Small community, small language, small group, smaller thoughts, varieties. They will become the religion of the future. A larger religion which is following other religions will become the doom for the future. Think of this.
afternoon, sir. Thank you for the lecture. It was really enduring. So my question is based on a story my mother told me. So in the early 70s, my family is from J&K, and my maternal grandfather, he was in the central government service, and he was transferred to Mumbai. So in the early 70s, obviously the family had to move into Mumbai as well, and my mother and her brother, obviously they had to get an admission into a school. And no school was ready to give them admission in Mumbai because their criteria at that time was that the child should be either Marathi speaking or he should at least know some of the South Indian languages. So obviously a language bias and a language distinction and a regional distinction to some extent existed evidently at that time. Things are much better now, but still these distinctions and these biases, like, they still exist in our country, in our own country. And as you said, that democracy, the heart of democracy is in debate, not agreement. So how do you comment on, and what are the solutions that we can formulate? So because these distinctions are obviously, these are cancerous, and like, they divide our own country, and they are really to some extent still evident in our country.
You make me a happy man by asking this question. I'll tell you. I am promoting a crazy idea. Please consider, and all of you are going to be the decision makers in future, and therefore I plant this idea in the field of your thoughts just now. When India became independent and we created states, we also created some states with a very special kind of identity called union territories. And in India, we do not feel uncomfortable having states and union territories. That's okay. Today, a city like Bombay or Delhi has native speakers of more than 300 languages, active, contributing to the economy, doing meaningful work, and who will be there for some generations to come. It is time for us to think of these cities as multilingual cities, and we need to make a constitutional provision to identify them as multilingual territories, multilingual cities, just as we identified union territories. Now the question is, should there be a separate governor for that? Like Delhi is going through that. Is Delhi a state or I am not suggesting making Bombay a separate territory. I am saying it should be identified as a special linguistic territory, multilinguistic territory, because the educational policy of Maharashtra is one and the same for villages in Maharashtra as well as in Bombay, for Bombay. But the linguistic situation of Bombay and the linguistic situation of Maharashtra outside Bombay or outside the unitary urbanized area of Maharashtra, they are not one and the same. The three language formula can very well work in a city like Kolhapur even today, or Solapur for that matter, or Nasik, but may not work for Nagpur or Bombay. So this state can have two different education policies. If Bombay is recognized as a multilingual city, Calcutta is recognized as multilingual. Calcutta has more than 600 languages spoken there, because northeastern languages. People come to Calcutta for employment. They don't like coming to Delhi, because here in Delhi, they are employed as domestic servants and a lot of exploitation happens. In South, they are actually hounded out. So they prefer going to Calcutta, they feel safer there. 600 languages are spoken in Calcutta, but only one language policy, education policy is there for West Bengal. So we need to readjust our state arrangement, taking linguistic reality, without breaking up the country, without balkanization. Not linguistic balkanization, but linguistic realism has to come in our policy.
Please. That's the mic.
Good afternoon, sir. So it's very natural that we promote our language or we feel proud of our language. So, but what are your views to the anti-Hindi movements that are going in the southern part of the country?
I am in favor of all pro-language movements, and I am against all anti-language movements.
I can speak loudly. Sir, I'm very thankful to Sandeep for bringing me to this lecture. This is very transformative in thinking actually. It changes your whole perspective. I hope your lecture can be given to various people all over the country. It will transform the way people will think because this perspective is not there.
Sorry. Actually, I also thought like you at one time. Once I was invited to the parliament to lecture to the MPs, and I thought I'll go and transform their views. No, I'm serious. No, you know, MPs are very serious. I really mean it. But only 7 turned up. Only 7 turned up. And that transformed my view of the parliament. So giving a lecture is always giving a lecture, but also taking something from the audience. Today, I take a lot of energy and enthusiasm from it. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you. I have heard that people, when you are I'm getting old, so when you get old, people say if you learn a different language, your chances of getting Alzheimer's reduces. That is one. I want to ask you, is that true? Because you also get the thought process behind languages. And so is it good to learn more than 2-3 languages? Because your system will get confused. It's a thinking process. So if you get 2-3-4 languages, what do you do to your mind?
The brain does not distinguish between how will I say? The brain is a field which is like a cricket field and a football field together. When language goes inside the brain, all languages that go inside the brain looks at all of that as a single spectrum. It is culture that distinguishes one language as being different from another, like atmosphere, which is one. But I cannot say with courage that the Chinese atmosphere is mine and Indian atmosphere is also mine. It will be seen as violation of airspace. But it is actually one. The human brain thinks of all sound. The human brain hears, absorbs much larger field of sound than human languages show. Actually, much larger than the field of this sound is the field of silence that the human brain absorbs all the time. But humans have still not come to the full understanding of the meanings of silence. When we move to the virtual world, a lot of meaning transaction will be in the arena of silence. Even today, when I look at this all the time, it is in this zone of silence that meaning is being transacted. And that could be far more complex meaning. We move from euphoria to language, to insanity, to silence. At the moment, humans are in the era of insanity, and beyond that, the era of, that's what Freud inaugurated, and we are concluding by destroying the earth. We'll then move to the era of silence, which is much more semantically complex future to come for us.
Government and Public Policy and on behalf of the university, I wish to profusely thank Dr. Ganesh Devi for drawing our attention to a much neglected but extremely critical issue. Everyone has a right to profess, practice, and propagate one's culture, and that includes getting educated in one's mother tongue. And if you see across the world, this right is denied. There have been any number of court cases in Europe and other continents, particularly before the European Court of Human Rights and other international human rights fora, on the right to get educated in one's own mother tongue. And Dr. Devi, thank you very much for explaining the complexities of a very important, but which is not on the mainstream agenda of the public consciousness. And in fact, I've had opportunity to work with Dr. Ganesh Devi very closely on another matter, that is the rights of denotified and nomadic tribes. In colonial India, certain tribes were categorized as the criminal tribes, and even after independence, they were still stigmatized, and they're tortured by the police and the administrative system. And he, along with the eminent literati, Gnanpith Award winner Mahasweta Devi, have, if you see the numbers, they are not very significant numerically, but what matters is the invisibility of the issue. It's about the rights of a very marginalized and disempowered and dispossessed community that matters. Thank you, Mr. Devi, for really provoking our thought processes. I wish to extend a warm welcome to the BA Economics and MA Public Policy students, and also those students who are returning back after their summer break. And I want to extend a warm wishes for your success. And my only appeal to you is that in fact, I want to tell you that our Chancellor has a special, this thing for School of Government and Public Policy. In fact, among all the 8 schools of the university, in fact, there were a lot of thought he has gone into his mind, and he has great expectations from this school. And in fact, last December, there was a major conference on air pollution in Delhi that was organized by the school, and there are many more things we expect, and I'm sure the faculty and the students of this important school, and there are any number of challenges, be it climate change, be it Swachhata, or many other public policy challenges are there. I'm sure the school will devote its attention and work on some of these policy issues and make a difference. And for the new students, I just want to draw your attention to the Student Code of Conduct, policies relating to the academic, particularly attendance, the terms and conditions attached to scholarships, and our zero tolerance to the racial discrimination, ragging, physical violence, and the use of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. You have a range of opportunities by way of internships, study abroad opportunities, and you have a wonderful faculty. And I request you to make full use of all the opportunities that are coming your way, and excel and carve out a great name for yourself and prosper. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck.
Yeah, I think Professor Murthy has already, given thanks to Dr. Ganesh Devi for his very fantastic lecture. So I would just like to add just one line saying that it's very nice to hear such a powerful lecture which can connect with the brain, to this neuroscience, to human living and how languages are important for human existence, but also for democracy, politics, and diversity, and how in order to be more tolerant society, we need to be respectful to our language. As we have to face this challenge of going towards English language for our socio-economic mobility, at the same time, I think we'll have to be more sensitive towards our own mother tongues. And thanks, Dr. Ganesh Devi, for this very fascinating lecture.